Segun Starchild, Black Egyptians, you cannot stop my fate. Today's video is Polygyny is African culture. Welcome to the video and to my channel if you're listening for the first time. In Black Egyptians, I talk about African culture, ancient Kemet, polygyny and other things in between. So I'm going to be talking about the practice of polygyny on the continent of Africa, both historically and in the present day. If done properly, polygyny can be beautiful, fulfilling and fruitful, and I think it's a worthy aim of any man with vision, guts and who is family oriented. Now, I've said several times, African culture is the underlying framework which governs most aspects of my life. Whether that's religion, marriage construct, where I live, health, how I raise my children, and more. You can do things the Western way, or do things the African way. It's totally up to you. As a light worker, an indigo child, I've pretty much made it my mission to destroy corrupt systems and assist in the rebirth of the planet Earth into higher dimensions. My job is to guide our African people back to our original ways of life, because we've fallen so far from what we've been created to be. The current systems, fam, are archaic, unhealthy, and we must change pretty quickly or continue to fail globally as a people and civilization. Polygamy is the natural order of the African family structure. It's how we do things over here. That's one of my favorite quotes. If you know me, you heard that many times. I just love saying that. What a great way to kick things off. If you understand that, you'll go very far in life as a man and a woman. I've also got a new one I'm introducing for the first time. Polygamy is an African phenomenon. Yes, we know this to be true. In Africa, polygyny was virtually universal and is still prevalent. If polygyny is our culture, then monogamy is their culture, they being the Oibos, the Wazungus, the white man. Culture is simply the way in which a group of people do things. Yeah? The black people believe we can practice anybody's culture and it wouldn't have an adverse effect. But culture has its way of embedding itself into people's psychology and inverts the style in which people sustain themselves, even when they don't make a concerted effort to do so. You may have heard of Brother Polite. He says culture denotes common customs, and his definition of common customs is a calculative system that precipitates culture by a process of differentiation and integration, where we are able to find value in smaller things, factorials of those equivalents, thus giving us permutations, and these permutations represent what? Conflict, resolutions and multiple possible outcomes. To explain things, your culture is supposed to protect you from harm. Let's take the dowry payment in Africa. I think the dowry payment for a wife in Africa wasn't just to show that you could financially provide for her, but to make you less likely to leave her. See, I've sat down and thought about things, family. Our ancestors in their greatness probably developed dowry to protect women, because they knew women couldn't protect and provide for themselves. We've been trained to think that dowry is for a woman's value, but what if it was because of her state as a liability? Yes, it's a father's job to raise his daughter into adulthood, and then when she becomes of marriageable age, a young suitor comes along, and in the process of marriage, the father gives her away. It's an exchange of ownership, just like a debt can be passed on from one company to another. So why not make men work extra hard to acquire a wife? You're less likely to leave something you've worked very hard for, right? And also because women are the ones to bear your seed. We needed to pay for it. Now you have women saying they don't need no man. Such delusion is the antithesis of our finely tuned culture refined over thousands of years, and will only end up hurting them. We've seen the confession videos of feminists and thoughts, but most women lack accountability and continue on their path of self-destruction. A better example is the human body. It's designed to protect us. Think about it. When you don't have enough blood in your body, what happens? Your body goes into a state of shock to keep your organs and tissues working properly. If you're out in the wild, whether a forest or jungle, and you see a wild animal like a wolf or a bear that's about to attack you, or a madman if you're in a city, the body enters what's called the fight or flight response. It's your body's sympathetic nervous system releasing adrenaline to prepare your body to either stay and fight the threat or to run away to safety. Our heartbeat increases, we breathe faster, and your entire body becomes tense and ready to take action. Family. The reason I'm saying all this is because polygyny was there to protect us. We knew it was man's nature to love and be with and desire multiple women, so why not apply damage control? Would women prefer it if their husband just straight up left them for another woman? Because it happens. That way they haven't cheated, right? Because you hate liars and cheats, right? So okay, I've broken up with you now. Now I'm free to do whatever I want. Women have been fucked up when they find out their man is cheating. They experience trauma, jealousy, hate. And not all men cheat and go back to their wife to play the I'm sorry game. I can change, I'll do better next time. No. Some men just leave them entirely for the new woman. Do you know how much that can fuck up a woman? Ask Alicia Dixon. So without further ado, let's take a look at polygyny in Africa. Okay, so let's start with Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. Now, some of you might not rate Wikipedia, you might not rate or respect it, but it's a pretty good place to start. We can get into bigger and better stuff later. So, polygyny is the most common and accepted form of polygamy, entailing the marriage of a man with several women. Right. Polygyny is more widespread in Africa than any other continent. Throughout the African polygyny belt, stretching from Senegal in the west to Tanzania in the east, as many as a third to half of married women are in polygynous unions, and polygyny is found especially in West Africa. There's a lecturer called Elijah Baloyi who teaches theology at the University of South Africa. He wrote a paper, Critical Reflections on Polygamy in the African Christian Context, where he states, polygyny is a phenomenon often associated with African people. In almost all African societies, polygamy is an acceptable and valid form of marriage. In fact, monogamy has been associated with people of lower social status. Let me repeat that. He says, 1, polygamy is associated with us, right? So black people and polygamy go hand in hand, just like rap or basketball. In almost all African societies, polygamy is an acceptable and valid form of marriage. So it's not just a few places in Africa, it's pretty much everywhere. And number 3, monogamy has been associated with people of lower social status. That's why the term high value male is so popular today, because historically, men of higher status, men of wealth, the chiefs and village elders got to access more than one female. Females are hypergamous, they like money, they want resources, they want to be taken care of, they want to ensure their child or offspring will have a higher chance of survival. So they will go for this minor value. This crosses both biological and sociological paradigms. Though we'll be focusing on the cultural aspect today. Okay. Next one we're going to look at is polygamy remains common and mostly legal in West Africa. And this is from westafricabrief.org. Right, it says here, polygamy has declined in the last decade but remains common in West Africa. For example, 33% of women in Nigeria reported that their husbands have more than one wife. This very old practice is essentially recognized under certain conditions, including the financial capacity to support multiple wives and families. In practice, a polygamous union is in most cases limited to 2 women per couple. 6 West African countries have civil codes that formally prohibit polygamy: Benin, Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Guinea and Nigeria, but legal restrictions are rarely enforced. Other countries such as Burkina Faso or Togo recognize polygamous unions under modern civil law, but allow couples or men in Chad, Mali, and Senegal to choose between a monogamous or polygamous union. In some countries, such as Mauritius, a man is only allowed to marry a new woman with the consent of his existing spouse or spouses. In Nigeria, multiple marital regimes operate in parallel. While civil law formally prohibits polygamy, the 12 northern states that are governed under Islamic Sharia law recognize polygamous marriages. If the vote on the new civil code is confirmed, Guinea will become the latest African country to legalize polygamy, following Kenya in 2014. And we'll look at the countries in detail later. The legal status of a woman can help protect her and allow her access to certain rights. However, polygynous marriage contravenes a woman's right to equality with men. Traditionally more prevalent in rural areas, polygamy has also adapted to the urban and educated environment. And that's important because I've heard people say that polygamy is for illiterate women, but they've just confirmed it's been adapted to the urban and educated people too. Okay, so we're still in the introduction section. We're going to take a look at one. Now this is a bit different because it's an article. It's like a blog, whereas the rest are like more formal things. But either way, now this is written by a feminist. Right, so do bear that in mind and take it with a pinch of salt. However, it's still a pretty good article, and we can get into it. Right, the title is "Polygamy in Africa has little to do with sex." At its core, polygamy is natural because men biologically need to spread their seed, and it is hard for them to commit to one woman. Right? Wrong. Okay, first thing. This is right, because just simply, if polygamy wasn't natural, in 100 men, just 100 men at random, even in the world, let alone Africa, but in the world, you'd only have a few cheating husbands. You'd only have maybe, what's a low number, right? You don't, a low number of between 10 to 20%. You wouldn't have more than 20%, so 20% of men in a given sample, no more than that will cheat. So it's the exception. Polygamy is the norm rather than the exception because so many people are doing it. Right? So for her to come and say, wrong, no, actually, it is hard for men to commit to one woman, because if it wasn't so hard, most men would just commit to one woman and call it a day. Now, one thing about feminists is they just go with their own head. They don't actually take the time to actually look at something. That's what we're doing today. Because has she actually sat down and spoken with these men? No. Right? So you have to bear that in mind. Right? So let's move on. But this argument is one commonly given to explain the tradition. For instance, Ghana's first president, Kwame Nkrumah, wrote in his autobiography that however unconventional and unsatisfactory this way of life may appear to those who are confirmed monogamists, and without in any way trying to defend my own sex, it is a frequently accepted fact that man is naturally polygamous. So for her to even come out and say this, from a man who's the president of a whole entire country, she's just dismissed the argument, completely dismissed it, but yet confirming it in the words of a man. So you can't listen to these feminists at all. They just don't know reality. Okay, and moving on, and following a law that would protect women in polygamous marriages in Tanzania in the 1970s, male deputies protested saying if a man has to get his wife's consent to a second marriage, the African tradition where man has always been superior to a woman will be endangered. And this is a big quote because we're going to see how this whole consent comes into effect later. But my job is to show you that this is an African tradition where one, man is superior to woman, and two, men do take women to be the second and third wives. Men do practice this. It's our culture. In more modern times, President Jacob Zuma of South Africa has defended the tradition in similar terms, saying that it's better than cheating, which he nevertheless also managed to do. Well, yeah, well, men, right? He can have as many wives as he wants, but also men have concubines too. So, hey, we not only take on polygyny, which is marrying more wives, but we establish either what's in old terms, concubinage, or new terms, side chicks. Who does this? Okay, status, not sex. Yeah, even if natural urges are the reason men choose polygamy today, which I doubt, considering it would take an admirably virile man to keep an amount of women sexually satisfied, historically, the sexual aspect was hardly the most relevant. Furthermore, women also have natural urges. Well, having natural urges is part of the reason, because we enjoy more sex. It's our culture, right? Again, if men didn't desire polygamy, if men didn't desire more than one woman, we wouldn't cheat. We wouldn't even desire one other woman, let alone go out, cheat with them, or try and have an established side chick relationship with them. We just wouldn't. So that does come into play. Second, to say you need an admirably virile man to keep an amount of women sexually satisfied, well, no, not really, because again, you're not looking at reality. The reality is that most men actually have at least 2 or 3 women, if not 4, right? Yes, people go to work, people have business meetings, they go on holidays, but I've had 3 women in my life at several occasions. It's not that hard. Don't think I have to be fucking one woman Monday, fucking next woman on Tuesday, fuck the third woman on Wednesday, and then come on Thursday, and then rotate back to woman number 1, and then Friday, woman number 2. Like, you're not fucking every day. People live their lives. Most men can manage, or bosses, or CEOs. We can manage you, women like that. It's not that hard to have 2 or 3 women. You see, you got to understand that the women have these overly sexualized minds when they're thinking that you have to be fucking all these women like pat every single day. Come on, bruv. That's not what polygamy is about. And according to her own title, polygamy in Africa has a lot to do with sex. So in that case, why are you mentioning it like that? Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to her argument. The truth is that polygamy was to do with status and wealth. Exactly. So you don't need to be worried about how easy or hard it is for a man to satisfy several women, because it's not just about sex, it's about status and wealth. The more wives a man had, the more his wealth grew. Why? Because it was women and their children who worked the land. That is also why, contrary to popular belief, monogamy was equally common in pre-colonial Africa, if not by choice. As historian Samuel Johnson writes in his seminal book, only the wealthy can avail themselves of the luxury of polygamy. And again, we've seen that because it's the higher value males, the men with resources, who get access to several women like that, right? We'll get into that later. It's still the average village man who can have 2, 3 wives. Don't just think it's only the wealthy, right? In certain places, yes, the wealthy can have a whole lot of women, but this is widespread in Africa. And the wealthy is only at least 15%, if that. Normally, it could be at least 10% of wealth. But everyone else is below the average. So who's marrying these women? And we're talking about big population people. So even for women, polygamy in ancient times was not always disadvantageous. Through polygamous marriages, women in pre-colonial Africa often had greater personal autonomy. As new wives joined a compound, older ones could focus on their trading. And successful women traders, such as the Iyalodes in Yoruba land, had a lot of power. While autonomous female traders are traditionally linked to West Africa, studies have found a long history of women's trading also in places such as among the Kikuyu in Kenya, as well as groups in Uganda and Zambia. Also, women could take lovers that would pay husbands for the loan if the husband allowed it, which some would if the wife was not the first or the last. Now, this isn't that common, but I actually have witnessed this because I've been to Kenya. I'm in Kenya, and I've sat with the Maasai. And when the Maasais go off on their journeys, they leave their wife, and have a wandering man who needs a place to stay that night. If he realizes the man is gone, he can then go in and sleep with that wife. They didn't necessarily pay a loan or money because that's part of their culture, but wife swapping is actually allowed, or is actually practiced in some parts of Kenya. Now, I only know that in the Maasai tribe, and it's probably done in other parts, but like I said, I have witnessed that. In Guinea, albeit during colonial rule, in order to escape nagging husbands and join the independence struggles, women went so far as to acquire wives for their husbands, as explained in Emancipate Your Husbands. Of course, whatever autonomy polygamy afforded back then, it was subsumed by colonialism and the rise of puritanical missionary teaching. So you can probably see why I'm reading this article now, because she has done a research. Polygamy has dropped in numbers. It did fall in popularity during colonial times and during the missionaries came. That's just a fact. What about love? I'm sure that we today describe as romantic love. I'm sure that what we today describe as romantic love could be found in polygamous homes. Humans are biologically predisposed to feel romantic love. But since couples in love would run away from their parents to be together to avoid polygamous marriage, it seems likely that it was now the norm, that it was not the norm. There are accounts of missionaries rescuing a woman being kidnapped, only to learn that it was staged. In fact, it was the woman's boyfriend kidnapping her so that they could escape the inevitability of her ending up in a polygamous marriage. Well, you have to look deeper than that, because she's focusing on the polygamous marriage, but the whole point, if you want to mention people avoiding polygamous marriages, it's not really the polygamy you need to be concerned with, it's arranged marriages. So people are running away from arranged marriages. It wasn't just polygamy. And in terms of this missionary rescuing someone to learn that it was in fact the boyfriend kidnapping her, well, again, that's arranged marriage. They probably have their own love. Their parents wanted to marry them off, so they did what they had to do to escape. Right, polygamy has far from disappeared. From President Zuma to village heads in Zimbabwe, see what I mentioned? It's not just rich men who did polygamy back then or do polygamy back then. Again, the rich in Africa only account to about 10 to 15%, like actual rich. The rest are middle and poor class. So, you know, the village people are practicing it as well. So don't just get it twisted that only rich people do polygamy. To my own granddad, who married 4 women, polygyny is part of the fabric of African life. What more do I need to say? Polygamy is part of the fabric of African life. I don't think polygamy should be illegal. As long as our societies are marked by both poverty and patriarchy, it will continue. Women still depend on men financially, and social norms entitle men to dominant roles. Of course, I wish both poverty and patriarchy would end, and I certainly think that as long as polygamy is legal, women should also be able to marry more than one man. Also, some people might be genuinely happy practicing polygamy, but please spare me the march against people that polygamy in African society is about the men's natural urges. It's not about sex, it's about status. Now, this is a pretty good article, even though you can see the woman has conflicting views. She's fighting a battle between herself. She, at one point, she has that African gene in her. Her own granddad had 4 wives, but because of the feminism, she's rejected it. She's not looking at reality. She has covered a lot, and it was important for me to read you this, but it's interesting to see how it's part of life and the different arguments that you can take towards it. With her saying that, even to say that women depend on men financially, well, if that's the case, then why not? Why can't a man have 2 or 3 women to look after? Because you can't depend on yourselves. social norms entitled men to dominant roles. Yeah. So if we're the dominant people in society, if we're the stronger sex, we should have access to more than one woman. Yeah, she wishes poverty and patriarchy would end. Poverty we could leave aside, but patriarchy, well, this is Africa. Do you want to be the head of the house? Do you want to provide for your man? You can say you wish it would end, but women aren't ready to take that role. So that argument's null and void. And then she's saying that she thinks as long as polygamy is illegal, women should be able to marry more than one man. We don't even need to get into that, but one, polygamy is not normal biologically. Polyamory, where a woman has more than one husband, it's not normal biologically. It's not in the Bible or in any religious text for that matter, and it's not in African culture. So that's just feminism. That's just feminist spew saying we're equal to you, but it's not reality. So yeah, we can see that argument. And this title's by, I forgot to introduce it at the start, by MissAfropolitan.com. Okay, so we're gonna look at other stuff. Read the comments in your own time, and we'll move on from now. Is what we want for ourselves. African American women who practice. So let me introduce Patricia Dixon to you. I'll change my screen here. Right, Dr. Patricia Dixon is an associate professor in African American Studies at Georgia State University, where she teaches courses on African American male to female relationships and family. In the book, Dr. Dixon debunks myths about monogamy and polygyny and challenges us to rethink our approach to marriage and the family. She offers reasons to support polygyny, most importantly, the shortage of available African American men. Through extensive interviews, she offers an insider's look at polygamous marriages, showing readers its benefits and disadvantages, interpersonal dynamics, how financial, sexual, and parental responsibilities are determined, and the legal, moral, and cultural challenges that must be overcome in order to make polygynous marriages possible within American society. Finally, she calls for African American women to move toward building marriages based on love, truth, community, and ultimately a womanist ethic of care for sisters. Now, notice the term womanist, right? Womanist is a sort of more natural way of being a feminist. Being a feminist is just a lie. And it's actually damaging to women and society. Whereas being a womanist, look into it, I won't go into too much detail here, but it's a much better way of being a feminist. And I do believe a woman I've talked on in my previous videos, Catherine Achalonu, also talks about not necessarily womanism, but she talks about motherism, which I think is a form. So for those of you who are really interested, go check her out, Catherine Achalonu in motherism. Okay, so let's take a look at some of her findings in the book. She talks about how Harriet Tubman came back to free more slaves. And that's her there. Right, so Harriet Tubman actually came back 29 times, to be precise, to free more slaves, and she freed more than 300 of our ancestors. You must understand, family, that this took a deep love of African people. She sacrificed and risked her life each and every time coming back for her brothers and sisters. This deep love extended beyond herself. faith and trust in God. Let's be real. How many of us even have an iota of that love today? See, it's not just about me. It's not just about you. It's about all of us. And you know the saying, she would have freed more if they knew they were enslaved. So Dr. Dixon, as a free woman, in this light, is attempting to free us from attachment to paradigms that keep us in mental, emotional and spiritual bondage. In her own opinion, the number one thing that breaks our relationships, families and communities is the fixation on Western paradigms such as exclusive monogamy and the values that stem from them. Now that's a good term, exclusive monogamy, because monogamy is obviously one-to-one, but that means I'm only entitled to you and no one else is. So that's exclusive monogamy. It is the same tradition as Harriet Tubman that we, people of African descent, must free ourselves from dependency on ideas and ways of being that clearly are not working for us. One reason for our troubled relationships, families and communities is the dishonesty, deception and dishonor that occurs when polygyny is practiced in a closed manner. It is impossible to build healthy relationships, families and communities with lies as an integral part of them. Let me say that again. It is impossible to build healthy relationships, families and communities with lies as an integral part of them. So if we want to build anything healthy, anything sustainable, anything happy, you can't do it with lies. So you might as well do polygamy. That's basically what she's saying. Now you can have your own form of polygamy where you discuss what each and every person is allowed to do. Well, the man really, because I don't tolerate. Tolerate's not even the right word. I don't condone polyamory, but if you know that lies is going to ruin everything, how can you build a relationship with the lies? It's just going to work. It's not going to work. So she believes that the only way that our relationships, families and communities will be mended is if polygyny is practiced openly. As an alternative marriage and family form, polygyny can eliminate the potential for dishonesty and deceit, which is divisive as the basis of relationship formation, provide a larger pool of men for women to select from. So rather than saying, okay, this man's got a girlfriend or this man's married, well actually, he's got one wife, I can be the second. Avoid women being reduced to their sexuality. If I've got a wife and I know I'm not allowed to have another woman, I'm still going to be the other woman. I just don't want my wife to know. So all you're going to end up doing is seeing a woman, sexing her and calling it a day. You're not going to have maintained a long relationship with her. All she is to you at that point is sex. So polygyny actually stops women from being used for their sexuality. But at least you can be wifed up additionally to the first wife. And then potentially hold men accountable to all women with whom they enter into sexual relationships and provide a mechanism for women and men to work together to build our relationships, families and communities. Hear that? Hold men accountable to all women who they have sexual relationships with. If I'm not allowed to have a second woman, again, I'm just going to keep you and leave you. I'm just going to fuck you and leave you, rather. Whereas, if I'm actually accountable for you, I'm going to make sure I get a woman who's actually on my level, I care about, and that way, I can be accountable for you. If I'm not, well actually, I've got what I want, got my wife, go. It's not going to help women. So, as with Harriet Tubman and many others of the past, however, it will require a love for African people in general, and for African American women in particular, to love and care for each other in an extension of self, faith and trust in God, sacrifice and other principles that she expands on throughout the book. Now this is deep, family, because one thing I've noticed in polygamy is that the women don't really care for each other. They don't really love each other like that. And the title of the book is called "We Want for Our Sisters What We Want." We want for our sisters what we want for ourselves, because it's women that are gonna have to take each other in. It's women that are actually gonna have to care about it. They have to say, look, you know what? You're a good girl, all right. You come join me and my man, and come be with us. You be my sister wife. He'll be your second. You can be his second wife. That takes love. Because other than that, we can see you having fucked up relationships, just leave you there. To keep on having fucked up relationships, just go your way. That's not care. So polygamy takes love and it takes care between a woman. Monogamy disempowers African women and undermines their marriages and families. The monogamous nuclear family is the accepted cultural norm, but it is not the majority practice. Polygyny is practiced in various forms. Now that can be open polygyny, where the man is honest about his dealings with other women and the women know each other, or closed polygyny, where the man cheats or has another woman on the side, in some cases for 15-20 years till the wife finds out, or open relationships where both the man and woman have other partners. Polygyny ensures everyone is loved and cared for and embraced in family and society. Western society has a significant proportion of ladies who, in the words of Kevin Samuels, are dying alone. So what's better for you? Being in a polygynous relationship or dying alone? That's for you to decide. I can't make that decision for you. Many have not reached the level of maturity, and this is important. Many have not reached the level of maturity, whether mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, to enter a polygynous relationship. And that is so true. I'm going to make a video of that, the spirituality of polygyny. A worldwide ethnographic survey of 849 human societies show 708 whose customs are polygynous. That's 83% polygynous. In Africa, polygyny was virtually universal and is still prevalent. And there was another study of the 297 African societies included in the sample by Murdoch. Polygyny was practiced in 284 of them. That's 97% family. Only 2 sub-Saharan African societies did not practice polygyny. The other 11 societies in which polygyny was not found were in North Africa. And this is in countries like Libya, Algeria, Morocco, where the population are Arab Berber and are not black African people. So let me try and get you, I'm going to try and get you some screenshots so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, that might take a bit of a while, so let's keep it moving. So in those groups, their ethnic groups are Kabyle or Tuareg and Tebu people respectively. So that's why they don't have the same cultural practice as us, because they're not black African. African societies, along with most of the world, did not practice monogamy. This was only introduced after European domination. Again, we saw that before with the missionaries and colonization. Western societies remains in a state of denial about alternative marriage agreements and hasn't established ways to help people navigate through them. When America was founded, it was antagonistic to the African family unit. Again, the African family unit, the African way of life, the African culture was not taken into consideration at all when America was founded and throughout its history for that point. So in her book, she does extensive research on men and women in 3 societies where polygyny is practiced openly. The first one is the African Hebrew Israelites, second is the Osset society, and the third is Muslims. She finds out how they adjusted to it, their motivations for engaging in it, the advantages and disadvantages, and their general perspectives. So these aren't just where polygyny is done and it's successful and it's happy. These aren't just random men meeting random women in random places and saying, hey, let's do polygyny. Polygyny is actually embedded in their culture. It's practiced openly. So whether people are part of a culture with the same ideals. So if you, as a man, are wanting to do polygyny, it might be easier to do it under the guidance of one of these religions. However, me personally, I would only go for the Orsa or Set society because that is Egyptian, similar to Nawab, being an Nawabian. I can't, with my high intellect, be a Christian or be a Muslim just for polygyny. It goes against who I am, right? So, religion is one way, but also in terms of our African culture, you may not need to do it under religion. You can literally go back to the village because that way it's part of the culture. It's so ingrained in their life, it's embedded in their culture. So rather than doing it the religious way, which is one possible way, you can do it where it's embedded in the culture in the villages of Africa. So unfortunately, don't forget our friend Elijah Baloyiho, who merged polygamy into the African Christian context. Unfortunately, it's been merged with monogamy because most people don't know how to read the Bible. The fake Christians, the charlatans. It's the Hebrew Israelites who have a real understanding. That's why they practice it. Polygamy in African countries. So we've gone into a bit of depth now. We've looked into this for a while. Now, I think it's important that we actually look at particular African countries, one at a time, so we can see the similarities that some of the countries might have and the differences they have. So we've had the brief overview, but now I think that's a pretty good look if we can actually compare the countries side by side and see how polygamy is done. So let's take a look. We're going to start off with Gambia. Now this is a pretty much basic Gambian tourist site, accessgambia.com. So it's a good source, all right? So let's go for it. Polygamy in Gambia. In Gambia, polygamy is a widely accepted, if not a widely debated, practice. Islamic tradition allows a man to marry up to 4 wives. They are usually referred to as co-wives. The highest status wife is the first wife. Usually, a man's first wife will be a woman about his same age, but other wives who are married over the years tend to be much younger, and in some cases, wives can be over half their age. Partly due to the fact that older men marry the available younger women, men tend to marry at an older average age, 29, than women, who marry at the average age of 19. Polygamy is losing popularity among the younger generation of men, who see firsthand the economic ramifications of supporting a large family on a limited income. Many of this current Gambian generation prefers to have just one wife. However, polygamy is only allowed by Islam if he can support the extra partner, otherwise it is forbidden. This rule has not stopped many Gambians of the older generation marrying more than one wife, knowing full well they will run into difficulties. The reason for this is because multiple marriages are seen as a status symbol in Gambia. Now this is pretty interesting. The first thing is that it's widely accepted. Again, polygamy is African culture. It's widely accepted. It might be widely debated too, but it's widely accepted. So you have, Gambia has a high population of Muslims. So obviously in Islam you can marry up to 4. we call them sister wives, but co-wives, same thing really. Now, what's interesting here is that, yes, the wife might be, your first wife might be your same age, so this is like your childhood sweetheart, or, you know, maybe if you're around 29, which is the average age for men, you're gonna marry a woman who's pretty much within a couple years over or under your age. So generally you might be younger, so 29-year-old might be marrying a 25 or 26-year-old. But however, when they do get the second or third wife, the average age is 19. So you're going to be marrying a woman who's 18, 19, 20, 21. Don't forget, Africa has a pretty much, Africa is the population in the world, the only population in the world which has the youngest population, right? Africa has a young population. So 19 is a great age to get married. Like, I champion that. So this is pretty interesting. I'm thinking I should go to Gambia and get a second wife. But seriously, it's good that they marry at a young age to save them from being out there in the streets doing whatever. I'm not sure why polygamy is losing popularity among the younger generation. It's really because of the economic situation. Now, Gambia isn't the richest country in the world. It's not the richest country in Africa. It is a pretty poor country, to be honest. So I can see why that might be stopping people from wanting to do it. We've seen that it's practiced in the community, it's widely accepted, but the real talk of having to do it in this life, it may make some people turn away from it. So if Gambia does increase its commerce, its value, then yeah, more men might do it. But definitely I can see why men might turn away from it. And because of that, they prefer to have one wife. We didn't talk about the Islam thing. So that's Gambia. We're going to move on. We're going to move on to Kenya. No, we're going to move into Nigeria. So, in Nigeria, let me get the website up. Okay, so we're back to the first page that we visited when we first started the video. So we'll take a look at Nigeria, right? Customary law, one of the three legal systems in operation in Nigeria, the other two being Nigerian common law and Sharia law, allows for the legal marriage of more than one woman by a single man. Unlike those marriages recognized by Sharia, there is no limit to the number of legal wives allowed under customary law. Currently, polygyny is most common within royal and noble families within the country, hence high-value male, and is largely practiced by the tribes native to its north and west. So, as you know, the north of Nigeria is Muslim, so you're going to have a high popularity of polygyny in the north. Although far less popular there, it is nonetheless also legal in Nigeria's east and south. So you have a higher occurrence of it in the north and the west. It's not as popular, but nonetheless it's still legal, it's still practiced in the east and south. Polygyny varies according to a woman's age, religion and educational experience. Research conducted in the city of Ibadan, the second largest city in Nigeria, show that non-educated women are significantly more likely 58% to be in a polygynous union compared to college-educated women, 4%. Followers of traditional African religions are expected to have as many wives as they can afford. Muslim men are allowed to up to 4 women, which we know, and only the basis he can care for and treat them equally. Christians are typically and expected to be monogamous. Among the Ngwa group in eastern Nigeria, studies show that 70% of polygynous marriages consist of illiterate men and women, compared to 53% in monogamous marriages. So again, if you're illiterate, you haven't been to school, you haven't been educated, you're more likely to be in polygyny. It's still a pretty high number for monogamy, which is 53%, but hey, that's just, 17% there. So that's polygyny in Nigeria. I'll comment on that. I don't have much to comment on. However, we will get into the legality of it later. One thing we will talk about is customary law, so I'll explain that fully, but we can see that in customary law, let me get that for you. Customary law is basically a traditional African marriage. So followers of traditional African religions, the Orisha, are expected to have as many wives as they can afford, right? Whereas Christians are typically expected to be monogamous. So we've seen how Christianity's changed things when it really shouldn't, and how the traditional African religions still practice the old school polygyny. So that's worth noting. Okay, we're going to move on to Kenya. Now, I can read this for you, but I've actually got a very good article. So let me go to that now. Right. So, new Kenya law legalizes polygamy. Women's group applauds it. Now, this is written in 2014. Now, I have a few articles here, right, and I will touch on them all, but I pretty much like this article. So I'm going to read all of it and then get into the bits that I like from the other ones. Okay, so a new law that went into effect in Kenya this week makes it legal for a man to marry as many women as he wants, and the leading women's group is applauding it. President Uhuru Kenyatta signed the polygamy measure into law Tuesday, formally recognizing what has long been a cultural practice in the nation. Parliament passed the bill in March, despite protests from female lawmakers who angrily stormed out of the late night session at the time. Hey, look, if you want to storm out, you can storm out. This is Africa. Women think they can go against the grain, they can put their own stamp on the world. That's not your job. It really is not their job. So let them storm out. The bill initially allowed the first wife the right to veto the husband's choice of additional spouses. So basically, if you want a second wife, your first wife will check her out for you. Male members of parliament successfully pushed to get that clause dropped. Marriage is the voluntary union of a man and a woman, whether in a monogamous or polygamous union, Kenyatta said in a statement. The Marriage Act 2014 defines various types of marriages, including monogamous, polygamous, customary, Christian, Islamic, and Hindu marriages. No limit on the number of wives. The The law legalizes polygamous unions, but does not provide an official limit on the number of wives a man can have. The Federation of Women's Lawyers, a powerful women's rights group, applauded aspects of the bill and criticized others. Polygamy already is a common fixture among the many cultures in Kenya and in some other African countries. Let me say that again. Polygamy already is a common fixture among many cultures in Kenya and in some other African countries. So, when I say polygamy is our African culture, I'm not making this up. I'm spitting facts. The information is out there in plain sight. Why pretending it doesn't exist? We've just seen that. The bill, the group said, is long overdue because polygamous unions were previously not regarded as equal to regular marriages. We are happy with the law because finally, all marriages are being treated equally, said Christine Ochieng, Executive Director of the nation's Federation of Women's Lawyers. All marriages will be issued with marriage certificates, including customary marriages. Before this, customary marriages were treated as inferior with no marriage certificates. This opened up suffering for the women because they could not legally prove they were married to a particular man. First wife has no say. However, she said, the first wife should have a say in picking her husband's co-wives. What we are not happy about is that now a man can marry another wife or wives without the consent of the first wife, she said. That section of the law is potentially open to abuse because a man can secretly marry other wives because he doesn't need his wife's consent to marry. But Jane Kimani, a Nairobi resident, said, the bill is archaic and has no place in modern society. Polygamous marriages should not even be an issue today, she said. Kenya is moving backward instead of changing with the times. How can it not be an issue if it's ingrained in your culture? You see, you might not think it's an issue, right? But the reality is, and I'm in Kenya, the reality is, Kenya, just like any other African countries, people are out fucking. Men are out fucking different women, women are out fucking different men. Like, let's be real. Men are married and they're still having side chicks. So, why not do it properly? Why not create a situation where the women can at least know each other, the women can at least help each other, the man is out there and has to be accountable for women? It's still gonna happen. So you can disregard it all you want, but like I said, this is African culture. So that's the end of that article. We're gonna move on to one by the BBC. Okay, so this one, again, in 29th of April 2014, President Uhuru Kenyatta signs Kenya polygamy law. And this one here was May 1st, so literally within a couple of days of each other. Right, so I'm not going to read out all of it, but I will say this. The key points from this is I want to take is it brings civil law where a man was only allowed one wife into line with customary law where some cultures allow multiple partners. So we've seen that already in the previous article. So now we need to understand that customary marriages are on the same level as civil marriages, right? So now let me explain customary law to you. Customary law is traditional law. It's like when you pay dowry for a wife. It's tradition. You might not necessarily have to do it in Western culture, but in African culture, it's normal. So you have the general or common law, which governs the whole country, but tradition is heavily recognized in Africa because we have so much of it. Like, we can't do away with it. Like, just an example of that is I'm in Kenya right now, and the Maasai tribe, you see them walking around the streets. They don't wear jeans, t-shirts, shorts. They wear their cloth around their body. They still carry knives. That's their culture, and they're not giving it up for no one. Even in 2021, they're still walking around in their native gown. You hear me? So that just shows you how much culture is ingrained in Africa. Now in Kenya, and I got this from a government website, a customary marriage is celebrated in accordance with the customs of one or both of the communities of the parties and is polygynous or potentially polygamous. So if you're Yoruba and you're doing a customary marriage, you'll celebrate in that based on the customs of Yoruba culture. If you're doing it based on the Luya, you're doing it on the customs based on your Luya culture, right? So there's obviously a battle in African countries between traditional and Christian values. Africa has to decide which one it will follow. Because like the Bible says, a man cannot serve two masters. He will love one and hate the other. Right? So let's move on to the next one. Now this is a pretty good article, but like I said, it's pretty long, so I don't need to read out all of it. You've kind of got the gist of it already. Kenya passes controversial polygamy law. Legislation condemned as a major setback for women. So the part that I wanted to show you is this. Mary Wangare, who is in her 80s and lives in the town of Othoya in central Kenya, thinks people are making too much fuss. In her community, it is the norm rather than the exception for men to have multiple wives. That's important. So even within Kenya, certain parts, it's normal. It's not an exception that, oh, you have, well, it's the normal thing. Again, polygamy is African culture. And the next part's also good. Among the traditional Kikuyu, it's the wife who looks for a second wife for her husband, Wangari told IWPR. This is because it is a woman's duty to till the land, while men traditionally herd cattle and go for war and raids. When the task of tilling the land becomes too much, a Kikuyu woman looks for a co-wife to help her till the land. Okay, so let me talk about that. We've read that certain people oppose the clause to allow a man to marry another wife without the wife's consent, and because they didn't respect the equality of spouses. Now, as the Tanzanian guy in Miss Afropolitan's blog said earlier, a man has always been superior to a woman. We were never created equal. So how can you institute a law disregarding this? Now I get it, it's nice, it's courteous for the man to tell his woman, hey look, I found this girl over here, I want to make her a second or third wife. Do you approve? And the wife can vet the new woman and give her answer. But this is Africa. We are the head of the household. Women cannot survive without us. And ultimately, it's the man's decision to bring in an additional wife. This has to be codified by law. There's no two ways about it. So well done on the Kenyan politicians who kept this clause. This is the power granted to us by God and the Creator, the ability to desire, entice, and procreate with multiple women. A woman can never fill a man's role. The dangerous work a man does, each and every day, a woman can never do. Even the ability to initiate, chase, and woo a man, most women are incapable of. Equality is a Western feminist concept, and Africa is in a battle between traditional and Western values. Back in the day, you might just be at home and see another woman turn up at your hut. We know this happened, family. So this battle is going on. We've pretty much seen that Kenya, dropped that clause allowing women the right to choose. Ultimately, it's the decision of the man. Now, while we're talking about Kenya, it is worth mentioning that Kenya does have same-sex legal marriages, but only for women. So I found another article doing my research. Kenya's legal same-sex marriages, right? This is coming out in 2012, right? So I've made some notes. I don't want to read out the whole thing for you, but I'm going to give you what the key points I've taken from it. So, as you can see, homosexual acts are outlawed. They're outlawed in the public, religions, and seen as un-African. But women are given a pass in a special way, which I'll elaborate on. Right? So, this only happens if a woman has never had any children, she takes on what is regarded as the male role in a marriage, providing a home for the younger woman, who is then encouraged to take a male sexual partner from her partner's clan to become pregnant. Juliana Soy married her wife Esther in the early 1990s and had this to say: "I married according to our age-old tradition, where if a woman was not lucky enough to have her own children, she got another woman to honour her with children. Her offspring will be regarded as the fruit of the marriage." Now, I've heard accounts that this takes place in Ghana and Nigeria too. The women do not have a sexual relationship. There's no lesbianism here. There's no homosexuality. They sleep in separate huts, right? So the wife thing between women is not sexual. By the time a woman like me decides to marry a young woman like this one, I must have reached menopause. At that stage, any love activities are for the young woman, not the old woman. The couple laugh as she adds, "A woman my age is like an aged cockerel, too old to do anything." Now, I'm glad that African women kind of realise this, because, I'm not one to put women down or tell them what it is we want to do. But it seems to me that African women know when to kind of call it a day with sex. They know they've reached a certain age and they look good. It seems to me that these Western women, these white Caucasian women, come into Africa for sex tourism. Now, yeah, you can exploit men because you're rich, but it's a big difference between black and white women when they reach that age of menopause, that they know to call it a day, but the white women keep continuing. That's just worth putting it out. Make of it what you will, but Africans seem to call it a day. Now, the mainly rural practice of a barren woman marrying another woman for the purposes of having children is slowly fading away. In some communities in Western Kenya, where modern fertility treatments are not accessible, polygamy is the preferred way of dealing with infertility. A wife who is unable to have children will often encourage her husband to remarry so the family can have children. Now, homosexuality. Why do I say this? If polygyny is African culture, then I have to say homosexuality is European culture. The Greeks and Romans have a long history of practicing homosexuality, and they even did it with young boys. Do you understand the history of the word lesbian? The island Lesbos? A year earlier, before Kenya passed its polygamy bill in July 2013, the UK passed a same-sex couples bill, allowing a same-sex couple to marry in civil and religious ceremonies. The first gay marriage actually took place in March 2014. So as you can see here from the website, the Act, what will it do? Applying to England and Wales will allow same-sex couples to marry in civil ceremonies, to marry in religious ceremonies, where a religious organisation has opted in to conduct such ceremonies and the Minister of Religion agrees. The third one doesn't really apply. Now, the fourth one enables civil partners to convert their partnership into a marriage, if they wish. So, we talked before in Patricia Dixon Spear about how we might want to talk about polygyny and monogamy, but the family unit really is the bedrock of our society. So that's what I want to talk about now. So I'm going to read this to you from the Women and Equalities Minister, Maria Miller. She said this: "Marriage is the bedrock of our society, and now, irrespective of sexuality, everyone in British society can make that commitment. It is a wonderful achievement, and whilst this legislation may be about marriage, its impact is so much wider. Making marriage available to all couples demonstrates our society's respect for all individuals, regardless of their sexuality. It demonstrates the importance that we attach to being able to live freely. It says so much about the society that we are and the society that we want to live in. This is a historic moment that will resonate in many people's lives. I am proud that we made it happen, and I look forward to the first same-sex marriage wedding by next summer." This is all possible under equal rights and LGBT. Now, they even went as far to say that this is equal marriage, right? Again, this you can see, the heading here, equal marriage, the key proposals at a glance. And she's saying, well, making marriage available to all couples demonstrates our society's respect for all individuals. It demonstrates the importance that we attach to being able to live freely. So irrespective of sexuality, everyone in British society can make that commitment. Mate, if that was really true, if it really was equal marriage, then polygyny would be equal to... Where is polygyny? Where's polygyny in the UK and in the West? It doesn't happen. So how can it be equal? I didn't think so. Where's the equal rights for polygamy? Not there, non-existent. So at this point, you have the African culture, which celebrates polygyny, and you have the Western culture, which celebrates homosexuality. Which one do you want? It's up to you to decide, family. Me, I'll go ahead and take my ass to Africa, marry a young, beautiful African woman. I know who I am. You feel me? So, well done again to Kenya for making this legal. And as you can see here, I've got this website too. Gay marriage legalised at midnight in England and Wales, 28th of March 2014. The government's controversial legislation was passed last summer, and some weddings take place in the early hours of the morning. Right. So, a huge round of applause to Kenya for leading the way for the rest of our African brothers and sisters. I have no qualms in admitting that this was one of the reasons why I actually moved to Kenya. Real talk. Real talk, family. Like, if you're going to live somewhere where the law agrees with who you are as a person. Straight. Now, I had mentioned Tanzania in one of my other videos. So can't remember what video that was, the ex-president of Tanzania, John Magufuli, rest in peace. I read that he said men should marry multiple women to stop prostitution. I was going to mention it again while we're talking about different African countries, how they practice it. But having done some research, it turns out to be fake news. The Tanzanian government have condemned the story on Twitter, saying that he never said it. So we'll forget about that one for now. However, let me tell you, I have been to Tanzania and the level of prostitution is very, 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 very high. So someone obviously feels strongly about it. And obviously, in my view, it would be good. Right? Not to stop the amount of hoeing and prostitution, but because it's African culture and it works for us as African people. So the next part I'm going to talk about now is desire for progeny. So, going back to the first article, I do actually want to mention South Africa before moving on to that. So, South Africa. We definitely talk about South Africa because it is quite important. So in South Africa, polygyny in South Africa is practiced among the indigenous Bantu ethnic groups of South Africa and also within the Muslim community. Although it was widespread in ancient times, it is now really common amongst richer men and men of status, such as chiefs and kings, including the former president of the Republic of South Africa, Jacob Zuma. Polygynous marriages of individuals over the age of 15 accounts for approximately 30,000, which is 0.1% of people in 2001. Both Islamic law and cultural family laws create a system in which Muslim men are encouraged to take up to 4 wives. Several factors for this include infertility or long-term illness of the first wife, excessive wealth, on the part of the husband, enabling him to support widowed or divorced mothers and the economic benefits of large families. Despite the historical and cultural history of polygyny among Muslim South Africans, polygynous unions are officially illegal on the federal level in South Africa. After 1994, various laws such as freedom of religion in the South African Constitution, the ratification of the UN's Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and the proposed draft bill on Muslim marriages have tackled the issue of Islamic polygynous unions in South Africa. Now, South Africa have mentioned before that they are going to allow polyamory legally, so I'm not sure if it was passed or not, but they were talking about a woman, making it legal for a woman to marry more than one husband. So that's just to throw it in there. Again, I'm not sure if it's actually passed. I did look at it briefly, but it was unclear to me whether it's passed or not. So if you're interested in that, you can go do your research. But we're talking about polygyny here. Again, this is the only country which has done that legally. So polyamory here, which many women, many feminists fight over, or if a man can marry more than one wife, why can't we? It's rare. It's the exception rather than the norm, because in every other African country, polygamy is the gold standard, not polyamory. So, we've talked about Kenya. Sorry, going in order. We've talked about Gambia, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. We'll pretty much leave it alone in the countries for now. I think we've pretty much got an idea. Saying that, before I move on, there is a map. Hopefully you can see this properly. I'm going to zoom out of this. So there is a map here that will pretty much show you how it's practiced, where it's legal or not. So as you can see, polygamy is legal in blue countries. Pretty much most of Africa, as you can see, polygamy is illegal. A few countries it's illegal, criminalized in black, and in the kind of orangey color, polygyny is illegal, but it's not criminalized. And as you can see, Africa and the Middle East have the highest amount of that. So it's worth looking at that polygyny website, Wikipedia polygyny, to get more info. So we'll finish looking at the countries. I now want to get one of the main goals of polygyny, because we've talked about polygyny a lot, but what's actually the benefit? Progeny is definitely one, which is children, right? So let's look at this for a minute. Right. Polygyny also served as a dynamic principle of family survival, growth, security, continuity, and prestige, especially as a socially approved mechanism that increases the number of adult workers immediately and the eventual workforce of resident children. According to scientific studies, the human mating system is considered to be moderately polygynous, based both on surveys of world populations and on characteristics of human reproductive physiology. So that's important. Let me say that again. According to science, procreation, human mating, is considered to be moderately polygamous. And that's based on what? When you survey world populations, there's a high or moderate occurrence of polygamy, and on characteristics of human reproductive physiology. So what that means is, or what I think it means, is saying, look, the physiology of your body is you're a man. Let's look at a man, for example. A man has balls and a dick. A woman has, and when ejaculates, he ejaculates millions of sperm. A woman has one egg, which will only get fertilized by one time. So that physiology, which we've seen from Olamide in that biologically video, as we can see the characteristics of that, they're able to see that that is what makes most populations polygamous, right? And we looked at that earlier in the section on Patricia Dixon's peer, which is a desire for more children. Now, we wouldn't go too much on the economic burden part of it. We'll talk briefly about libido, even though we've covered that in Science Polygamy. Let's just mention that here. Some analysts have posited that a high libido may be a factor in polygyny, although others have downplayed its significance. The sex drive is a factor in some Asian cultures, was sometimes associated with wealthy men and those that were adjunct to an aristocracy, although such libidinal perceptions were at times discarded in favour of seeing polygyny as a factor of traditional life. For example, many sub-Saharan African societies view polygyny as essential to expand their progeny and kinship, a practice of high cultural importance. In this case, it would be hard to determine whether the origin was that of high libido, as polygyny would be practiced regardless. Other explanations postulate that polygyny is a tool used to ward off inclinations towards infidelity. In Edith Busrup's 1970 article on the study of sub-Saharan African polygyny, higher incidences of adultery and prostitution were recorded in regions where polygamy was practiced, but delayed by males. Now, I will say libido is definitely an occurrence for it, because the more we've seen here that it's associated with wealthy men. The more wealth you accumulate, the higher your need for more women, the more testosterone you produce, right? So obviously, if you've got a high libido, you can deal with multiple women, right? So that feminist Miss Afropolitan was trying to downplay it, saying it takes an incredibly virile man to be able to look after multiple women. Well, actually, if you have a high sex drive, it's easy. And Goddess Eliana said this too. I believe she said something along the lines of, no one has the sexual power like a black man. Something in that respect. If I find that, I'm going to comment on it, because it's a beautiful quote, right? But we've seen here that libido is definitely an issue, a reason that why polygamy can be practiced too. So we're going to close this section of it in a minute, but let me just expand on that as well. So if Africans are practicing polygamy so much, right, let's look at how things are being done in Europe. So we've already seen that they have a high occurrence of homosexuality, right? Because homosexuality isn't that common in Africa. It's seen as un-African, right? Let me get to you the actual quote. Homosexual acts are outlawed in the public, religions, and seen as an African. So, saying that, if Africans are practicing polygyny, and if Africans are desiring progeny, children, and European Western culture is not, then obviously there's going to be a shortage of children being born. Now, the average fertility rate in the EU was 2.4 children per woman at some point. Now it's dropped to 1.5. A rate of 2.1 is required to ensure a stable population. European countries have used all sorts of campaigns and incentives to get more people to have babies. In Denmark, there was Do It for Denmark campaign, and all throughout Spain, Italy, they've hired sex ministers to get more people to have sex and produce children. Ultimately, it's their lifestyle and culture which determine this, right? Now, I just read through this section under the desire for polygyny. Polygyny is practice to grow your family, to enjoy the bonds of a close-knit family structure by taking on an additional wife to have babies with, whether for labour, to help you work the land, or for human interactions, love. This automatically improves the birth rate. We don't have to worry about low fertility rates in Africa. Right? Polygyny in African culture ties in with the scientific mating behaviours of the male species, where 97% of organisms are polygamous, covering the key principles of reproduction, one of the 7 characteristics of life. We are pro-life, in tune with nature. They are against nature, and that is evident by their very nature to kill, destroy, and modify things from its original state. Culture and science are one of the 3 tenets of polygyny, the other being religion, and I'll be releasing a video on that shortly. The 3 tenets of polygyny. Notice, there isn't anything there about equality or women's rights in African cultural science. Most African countries, apart from South Africa, practice polygyny, and polyandry is rare amongst female organisms. So, as I mentioned, I'm an Awapian, and I'm part of an organisation called the Ancient Egyptian Order, right? And we have information within our group, within our construct. And while we're talking about this, I do want to play it to you. I do want to read out part of it to you. So an excerpt in an Ancient Egyptian Order magazine says, "Meanwhile, they create the moral law that you don't see, but immorality that you do see. Then they entrap you in their laws from the things they introduce that don't apply to us." And that's my formatting. Because of the way the Caucasian has modern society set up, most of us today live in a situation where we have one wife or husband our whole lives. People try to fool the outside world into thinking they are happy. However, living under this system makes many people totally miserable. Men, are you with me? That's my words now. So instead, to rely sticking to their vows and remaining with their one partner, they're out whoring around with the next door neighbour, going to singles bars, or are sexually frustrated. Then they turn around and try to impose on us morals based on themselves. While on the other hand, there exists another group of them whose jobs are to create the immoralities that plague the world. Through the pornography and movie industry, they pump the airways and video screens with sex and lust. But they'll make you feel guilty for being an African, for living in a culture where you may have had more than one wife and where your sexuality was not restricted. They say that blacks are overly sexual, Latinos are overly sexual, Orientals are overly sexual, when in actuality, he is the one that is undersexual. And that's from the AEO Members Monthly Magazine, edition 1, volume 4, January 2000. And we've just literally read the quote earlier, the section earlier, where we talked about progeny, where we talked about libido. So we as Africans live in a culture where our sexuality is not restricted. If we have a high sex drive, which we obviously do, why should it be restricted? Why shouldn't we be able to act on it? In actuality, it's he, the Caucasian, who is undersexual. And then he tries to impose those rules on us when he doesn't even do it himself. When he doesn't even do it himself, rather. Family, you've got to think about this. Now, in my Science of Polygyny video, I mentioned Dr. Sebi's treatment of patients using his African biomineral balance method. I don't know anything that has been more beneficial or tailored to Africans than that. In the healthcare world, that is. It's a therapeutic approach that complements the African gene structure. Hence, polygyny is a marriage construct that complements the African sexual nature of the man and protects the family structure. Let me repeat that again. In Dr. Sebi's treatment, he calls it the African biomineral balance. That's his particular way of paradigm of treating patients. Now, if we take that into polygyny, We can then say it's a marriage construct that complements the African sexual nature of the man and protects the family structure. It complements the sexual nature of the man because we are the head of the house. Our women are here to serve and cater to us. It's not really about the woman if we're honest with ourselves. You work for the company doesn't work for you. We obviously desire more than one woman and can father offspring from several women, which is what sex is really about. It's not just about busting nuts, it's about creating children, family, progeny, offspring, seed. And by protecting the family structure, well, Patricia Dixon Spear already said that your family can't survive the lies and stress placed by monogamous relationships, so it will eventually fall apart. Build your house on solid rock, good foundations, and it will flourish. Wealth is also a big part of that protection, because polygyny creates generational wealth. Families entered polygyny when most of the population were farmers, because it was heavy work, and the more children you had from different wives, the more produce you could make. Even in modern times, wealth is still a big factor. A family in modern times now, working with 3 working professionals rather than 2, will be better off financially. Black men aren't given the same opportunities as their white counterparts, so we have to work on other ways to compete with other races. Okay, moving on to the next part. We're going to take a look at a video this time. And this time is from another woman who's actually a scholar by the name of Segun Starchild. And this video is called, it's part of a bigger documentary called Motherland. So if you haven't got the chance to see it, go check it out. But this is just a certain segment of that DVD. So before I play the video, let's just read a brief introduction. So, polygyny expert Segun Starchild gives a sharp and profound, scholastic food for thought on polygamy and African people. Polygamy became taboo with colonialism, and we've seen that before, due to the conflict with inheritance in large families, the social economic threat that was caused by increased African populations, and the Eurocentric Christian values. However, today, polygamy is still a reality and is becoming an option in the African diaspora in response to a social dilemma. Polygamy within the framework of law and balance is a viable aspect of African family systems, which is exited from Kemet to Sokoto. Perception of African self has been so given to us by the other that it is hard to distinguish what is indigenous intelligence and what is a product of mental conditioning because of the European dynamic. And that's big. That is a big statement. Like, the way we see ourselves, it's been so force-fed on us from the media, from TV, that it's hard for us to actually come along and say, actually, what parts of Africa, what parts of our culture actually work for us, and what's a product of mental conditioning because of the whole European system. So that's a big statement there. There's a great confusion around modernity with progress and development, and too often westernization, or more specific, Europeanization, collapses into modernity. African people must objectively re-examine structures that were the backbone of their historical development in an attempt to successfully engage in modernity. Again, so that's a nice intro, and you're going to see how that plays on. Okay, so let's go ahead and play the video and see what she has to say.
From my research on the matter, and having spoken to many communities within the African world that practice this, many of the women I have spoken to are very empowered, very educated, and when they have chosen this, we're talking about polygyny by consent, when they have chosen this as a way forward, as a life.
So some people assume that women in polygyny are oppressed. Well, actually they are empowered.
lifestyle as part of rebuilding. From my research on the matter, and having spoken to many communities within the African world that practice this, many of the women I have spoken to are very empowered, very educated, and when they...
So some people believe that women in polygyny are oppressed. Well, actually, from her research, which she's done on Africa, the women are educated and they are empowered. Polygyny doesn't equal oppressiveness. Polygyny doesn't equal oppression.
They have chosen this, we're talking about polygyny by consent, when they have chosen this.
Polygyny by consent, yes. We just saw that in the last book by Patricia Dixon Spear. Women who choose polygyny by consent. So when they choose polygyny, see what happens.
This as a way forward, as a lifestyle, as part of rebuilding family, then they have chosen it knowing.
This is about rebuilding family. Again, you can't establish a relationship, a community or a family based on lies. This is about rebuilding how? With the truth, with structure, with love.
What the implications are, and I think that we must not, underestimate the intellect of the African woman. And I think
the implications, let's deal with that. Let me play that for you again.
What the implications are, and I think this as a way forward, as a lifestyle, as part of rebuilding family, then they have chosen it knowing what the implications are. And
so these women are choosing polygyny knowing what the implications are. Let's talk about that briefly. What are the implications of a polygynous relationship? Okay. You're going to have a structure which is more likely to work. A man with 2 wives or 3 wives. You're going to have a system that's in place to support the woman. You're going to have a system in place where the woman has the additional help of another woman to cook, to clean, to look after the children, to share the husband's love. So the man will be fulfilled by having 2 women. Yes, to sleep with, to share love with, to talk to, but this man will be fulfilled. So it not only benefits the man, it benefits the family altogether, because that woman can bring in, even if it's as simple as her farming the land, which is how it was back in the day. Now in a modern society, a woman going to earn a whole entire income, 30, 40, 50 to 100k a year, supporting that man who's also a professional and a woman who's also a professional. They will get more money. So the implications of this are beneficial. In terms of the ones that you don't think are beneficial, yes, a woman might share a man, but hey, the woman is more likely to be happy knowing that, okay, my man is with this woman, he's with my friend, my sister wife, so I don't have to worry about him being with any side chick, being with any hoe. I know exactly who he's with. If a man does have one other side chick or one other wife, it increases his chance of getting STDs. So it decreases, because he's not out there fucking around with you know who. If he's not with you, then he's with another woman, point blank. So there are good and bad implications in this, and I can't show you. I've done my best, but if you're able to look at it, you will actually realise there are more beneficial implications rather than negative ones.
I think that we must not, underestimate the intellect of the African woman, and I think it's very problematic.
You must not underestimate the intellect of the African woman. That's a big statement. From what I've seen and from what we've seen in society, family, let's just be real. We can underestimate it because women aren't really choosing this. You have the odd woman here and there who does say, to my man, right, cool, you can go out and get another woman. But for the most part, women don't accept this lifestyle. Back in the day, you could have said that, yes, and back in the day that applied, but now you have to underestimate it.
When we just, the intellect of the African woman, and I think it's very problematic.
You have to underestimate the intellect of African women because they're not really choosing this. They're not really choosing this life, family. They're rejecting it, they're fighting it. They're not understanding science, they're not understanding religion, they're not understanding African culture. So you do have to actually underestimate the intellect of the African woman.
When we just, blanketly say that this is oppressive to African women. I accept that if we're looking at concepts of family and relationship within the paradigms of Eurocentrism, even Eurocentric forms of feminism, then we will miss the plot. We will see oppression of women perhaps where even there is none. But if we look and reclaim our own indigenous ways of reciprocity.
I love that. Reclaim our own indigenous ways of reciprocity. I made this video, family, because I've shown you Bible, I've shown you science, now this is about culture. We practice polygyny, it's embedded in our culture, it's an African phenomenon. So why not reclaim something which is ours and own it, fam? Why not? Because it's going to benefit you. You might not see, you might not be spiritually ready to accept it. You might not be vibrationally aware to even comprehend it, but it will benefit you.
Of harmonious male-female relations, we will understand and we have the ability to intuit and to reclaim that original mind where we...
You have the ability to intuit, but are you actually intuiting? Are we intuiting as a people? Use your intuition. You have a man who loves you, he can provide for you, and he loves another woman. You're going to reject it. You will leave your relationship. Yes, you have the ability to intuit, but you're not ready. And you're not going to create harmonious male and female relationships because it's based on a lie. Monogamy is not going to work for you.
We knew the science of why we did things. It's not a...
She's flowing right now. The science of why we did things. Fam, I've made my video. Check it out on my channel. The science of polygyny. There's a science why we did things. We did things so a man can have another woman to love. We did things so a man can have other children from other women. We did this so you can feel more fulfilled. So there's structure in the relationship. There's a soul science of this, and it's social science. It's anthropology. But a lot of people don't get it.
A system that can be imposed on anybody, and certainly no woman today should have polygyny imposed upon her. But if a woman is of a...
No woman today should have polygyny imposed upon her. I disagree with him, and I'll tell you why. Again, I know I'm born right now, but I'll cover my tracks, fam. I made a video. We must force a woman into polygyny. Fam, we know monogamy is not working for us. We know that wholeheartedly. You might reject it all you want, but you know it's not working for you. So why not create a system where it's part of the culture, it's embedded, it's ingrained, it's legalized, it's so part of the culture. If it was done, women would have nowhere to run. What were they going to do? Are they all going to run off to a white man? Are they all going to run off to an Arab man? Are they all going to run off to an Indian man or Chinese man? They're not going to do that, fam. They don't even have access to them. In Africa, in some places. So if you do it, it will then be a case of, well, actually, my friend's got a sister wife and they're happy. Well, if my man is going to get a second wife, then let me take the time and choose the best wife for me and him, rather than rejecting it, fighting it, wasting time, wasting tears, wasting energy. If we were able to reinstitute this and actually force women into polygyny, it would benefit us. And the reason it worked before is because women weren't given a choice. A woman wasn't given a choice of being able to run away or break up with a man if she found out he was cheating. You don't have that option.
Spiritual understanding, and a brother is spiritually able. And I mention spirituality because it's not just based about, oh, I can have several wives. It's not about that. There are some men who are in polygynous relationships that probably should not be, because they are not spiritually responsible. But if there are men that are spiritually responsible, see their roles and take their responsibility as an African man, as a father of civilization, as we are the women mothers of civilization, then surely we have the right to define for ourselves, to seize back our power to define what is family and what is appropriate in terms of providing for all the men and women in our midst.
Now, again, Patricia Dixon-Spear did mention that most women are not spiritually ready for this, but in terms of a man being spiritual, that's also important, because as a man, she did mention you knowing that you are an African man, so it's your job to provide, care for and protect an African woman. If you know that's your job and you have that love in your heart, right, you can provide for a second and a third African woman. Being spiritual, in my point of view, in my opinion, is about having that relationship with each of your wives, being able to guide each other. A woman who is by herself may make mistakes. Having a man, having a husband, having a soulmate to connect with, to guide her, that's spiritual. Being in a family unit, being able to bounce off each other, that's spiritual. So there is a spirituality of polygamy, even from the man's point of view, because he has to love, care for and connect. Spirituality is really about connecting with that other person.
So spiritual development is very important to us reinstituting or formalizing polygyny as a way forward.
In fact, one of the books I have called The Ultimate Frontier, they actually say that your soulmate, you and your husband or wife, it's just a hypothesis, but I believe it. You and your husband or wife may have actually signed an agreement to come into the world at this particular time to be with each other, to raise your own spiritual growth. And that's exactly what she's saying.
In many Western societies, you still have polygyny that's still being practiced in a covert way, whether it's the concept of man sharing, whether it's the concept of a woman that is very common, in particular the Caribbean, it still happens.
So if you know that monogamy isn't working, if you know that people are doing a closed form of polygyny, why not introduce polygamy into the system, and that way everyone can benefit? It's not working for you. It's not working for us, monogamy. It's dividing us. So surely you can institute polygyny and do it in a way where it benefits everyone. Isn't that better than closed monogamy? Sorry, than monogamy? Isn't that better?
Or the man that will just go around having illicit liaisons with other women, so-called affairs. Now, why is it we have a social system that permits that knows that it happens, but somehow would want to criminalise and delegitimise a way of actually bringing back justice and equity?
You're not going to have a system which condones polygyny simply because these so-called Western societies are not based in the Bible. They're not based on truth. Again, Patricia Dixon-Spear mentioned they weren't based on the African family unit in mind. It actually goes against the Bible because it allows homosexual marriage. So that's exactly the reason why it goes against nature. Western society goes against nature. It's not based on the Bible. It's not based on truth. It's not based on science. So they're going to do these backward things. That's a short answer to your question.
To these relationships. But actually, the system of polygyny in itself is not inherently oppressive to women. You can have women who are in a polygynous situation that may be oppressed. But then equally, you would have women who are single, i.e., might be having, casual, liaisons here and there, or women who are even married supposedly monogamously, where they are oppressed by men. If it so happens that we encounter men who do not know how to respect us. So it's not in the institution of polygyny that you find an inherent oppression of women. What is actually more oppressive, where you have a mythological social system that actually doesn't find a way to provide for the needs.
A mythological social system, that's big. I love her choice of words, I love her vocabulary in this video. It's amazing. Let's hit that back a bit.
Of women, what is actually more oppressive, where you have a mythological social system that actually doesn't find a way to provide for the needs of all women.
It doesn't provide a way to provide for the needs. It doesn't find a way to provide for the needs of all the women. What does Kevin Samuel say? You're going to die alone. With polygyny, at least you can group off several women into good relationships where their needs, their wants are taken care of. Which is not taken care of by themselves. It's a fact.
We have a right to relationship, and if we have a right to family, which we do, that's part of our essence of being human beings. You know, then why is it would be okay for some women to have this right and other women not to have that right?
Because you don't like sharing. Some women can get access to men, yeah. But some women can't. And we've seen that. And women are actually the reasons why they can't women. It's only your fault if you can't get a man. It's only your fault.
If we look at warfare...
So, the reason some women can't is because of their inability to adjust and their inability for training, all sorts of reasons. But essentially, going back to Patricia Dixon's Spear book, which I love so much, I keep mentioning it here. Essentially, you don't understand the concept of sharing. So only some women will get married and the rest won't. That's basically how it runs. Like Kevin Samuel says, 1 in 4 women get married. So that's bigger than an individual woman or individual woman. That's a whole society thing going on right there. 1 in 4 is a low number, fam. That's 25%. So that's a social structure.
We do have modern warfare on African men. If we look at the high rates of incarceration of men of African heritage in prisons in the Western Hemisphere, in psychiatric institutions, those who are dying as a result of gun crime and knife crime, we can see that this war actually has continued against the African man. So what happens when you create structural mechanisms that actually create this social reality, where you will have many of our men not able to play the role of a fulfilling partner, a fulfilling husband, a fulfilling and responsible father, and then...
So, because of systematic racism, because of oppression, because of police brutality, because of the white man's hatred of us, yes, black men are being incarcerated, put in prison, not given access to education, jobs, bank loans and the lot. That leaves a lower number of eligible black males for women to marry. Now, if you have lots of women who are disabled, women are very educated, if you have a whole number of women who are ready for marriage, so they say, and less number of men, how are you going to do the maths to put that together? You've only got 2 choices. You can either leave this high number of women and a low number of black men, or you can divide these black women against the black men. We don't want to do that because we don't want to embrace our African culture, because we don't like sharing. So you're going to have a whole number of women who die alone, who are never in relationships, never get married, and the low number of black men who do have these jobs and resources and marry. But a whole lot of unwanted, or as in some places put it, what's the term they used? unwanted woman, leftovers. You're going to have a whole lot of women who are leftovers because war is being taken out on the black men. So simple mass family. It's either you bring it together, it's either you divide the woman against a number of men, or you leave them alone. Two choices.
Then you have a surplus of women in the population, whereby you may have a brother that would want to actually provide a responsible role in terms of being a father to a woman, to children produced from one woman. But because of the legal construct of monogamy, then he's not actually permitted to play his full role. He can only play that with one woman. What does this mean for us as African people who have had...
I think she means a woman might have had a child or children from a man. For whatever reason, the man's not around anymore. So if this man has his own wife, has his own children, he can't then marry this other woman legally because it's not allowed. Now, I don't agree with taking on a woman with kids. I don't agree with that. Let's face it, in today's society, women are just running around getting pregnant by whoever, right? So, in the old school sense of love of African culture, in the old school sense of African family, where a man may have died in war, right? A man may have died, and this woman then needs a new man. Fair enough. But a lot of the time, unless the woman's died, or unless a man was the odd case where a man was so bad that woman had to break up with the man, it shouldn't be another man's job to go and take that woman and raise her kids. Because right now, women are just horny, sleeping around, getting pregnant. So and then you can't expect a man to then go and play Mr. Nice Guy, marry off another woman because hey, he didn't create that child, and you got yourself into that situation. So in the old school sense, where we are living in our prime state and we are looking after the community, yes, go and look after that woman and her kid. But that's only in extreme circumstances where the man might have died. If it's just the case you've been horny, running off to sleep around and you get pregnant, nah, we can't be doing that. I hope that's clear to you.
War declared on us and are still living in a state of war. What this means is that our responsibility is to somehow continue our peoplehood, our nationhood, to build nation, because the attack...
You see, this is great. We're supposed to continue our peoplehood, our nationhood. So this is about what's our nation? Africa. Whether it's Ghana, Nigeria, UK, blacks living in UK, America, we have an ability to do nationhood. What's that? Nation building, fam. Polygamy is nation building. We have a right to do that.
And are still living in a state of war. What this means is that our responsibility is to somehow continue our peoplehood, our nationhood, to build nation, because the attack is not just on buildings, it's not just on structures. The attack is really on the very institutions which actually guarantee us sustainability and guarantee us life. And the most basic institution is the family.
Big. Let me rewind that last part.
Still living in a state of war. What this means is that our responsibility is to somehow continue our peoplehood, our nationhood, to build nation, because the attack is not just on buildings, it's not just on structures. The attack is really on the very institutions which actually guarantee us sustainability and
So this is an attack on polygyny, because it's an institution that will guarantee us, and wait to see what she's got to say.
Guarantee us life. And the most basic institution is the family.
It will guarantee us life. So this is an attack on the family unit. Again, we cannot build families based on lies. So as you can see, fam, that was a pretty in-depth talk. I think she smashed it. Her words, her points, she absolutely smashed it. So let's move on. Okay, we've reached the conclusion now. So I want to close this up. We've seen things from a variety of sources. Great articles, sources I've read. So I want to take this time now to point out and summarize my own views. Yeah. So when we speak on polygyny in Africa, there's the notion that it was the woman who chose the second wife. And we've seen evidence of this in the Kikuyus in Kenya who did things like this. Now, I'm not one to argue against plain facts. That's not me. However, I do question if this was common practice in the rest of Africa. It may have been true on a small scale. In some tribes, some countries, but the way that women are, the way women have and always will be jealous of other women and protective of their men, it will take a very caring and spiritual woman to go out there, go out of her way and find another wife for her husband. It will take some of that Harriet Tubman love we spoke about earlier to bring in a second wife. And I don't know if many women are capable of that. I just don't know. Now, as I said before, most men, rich or poor, did polygyny in Africa. Make no mistake. But it was the men of high value, the kings, the chiefs, the strong warriors that had easier access to a high number of women. Think, fella. The key words there are easier access. See, average men in the village also married several women. Don't get it twisted, because it was so heavily ingrained in our culture. There's men in African villages, Kenya for example, who have 18 wives, 32 children, and guess what? He ain't a millionaire. So I just want to point out that it's not just high value males who can marry multiple women in Africa. It's the average village man, right? So they say women chose polygyny to try and control the situation. That's what I believe. They say this to feel empowered, like it's my choice. So if we did it back then you can't come on and demand it because we have to do it too. It's empowerment, family. So it's like when you meet a girl for the first time. You like her and you want to get to know her. So you ask her for a number. Right? She says, give me yours and I'll text you or call you. That's not feminine. She's being masculine. She's trying to control the situation. She's not serious about you. Women don't know how to chase or pursue. It's not in their nature. They're incapable of it. She probably has hundreds of other guys she's talking to. So when she's done riding the cock carousel, then she'll remember you. And after she's been ran through and fucked over. Most times when a woman asks you for a number, after you've asked her, you'll probably never hear from her again. So a possible situation where a woman might have chosen another wife. This is when the men went to war with other tribes and to fight the white man during the colonial period. See, large numbers of men would have been killed. So in the community spirit, the woman would get together and say to their neighbour, say to their friends, okay, my man has survived the war. Come and be with us and he will look after you and you will be my sister wife, rather than leave you out there by yourself, destitute and a widow. You see, it's a Western thing for a single woman to live her entire life without a husband. Africans are community people. We would step in and help someone out, even if they were too proud or too fucking stupid to realise they needed help. It wasn't normal for women to die alone, like Kevin Samuel says. Who's the head of the house? You or the man? Are female leaders natural in African culture or the Bible? No. So most black women are not following African culture, they've rejected it. And many men are too scared to put women in their place and pursue this lifestyle. It's a sad state of affairs we live in. But as black people, we've forgotten and replaced our traditional values and culture for Western ones, which will never work for us. What does it say about us as a people if we are so quick to follow the ways of the white man? If we lack the ability to objectively identify and analyse whether our ancient cultures and traditions actually serve us better than the Western paradigms we have been indoctrinated with, we have to seriously consider this. Every couple should at least have the polygyny conversation before entering a relationship. Now, me as a light worker, as an indigo child, it's my job to show you the truth about who we are and to crush any stupidness, any kind of fucked up Western paradigm that's holding us back. It's my job to crush it, and that's what I'm doing now in this video. I'm not introducing anything to you by talking about polygyny. The thing is, you already know this. You know your grandma was one of 3 wives, no matter which country you're from. You know your dad had children by other women. You know your boyfriend has seen other people, or has a big fan club. You've gone back to Africa and seen people in polygamous relationships, polygamous marriages. And I don't care which country you're from, but yet you are so stubborn and vibrationally low that you haven't sat down to reflect on your life and consider this beautiful framework with your significant other. It wasn't so cool to be African back in the day. Who remembers that? Africa was seen as a poor, drought-filled land with war and lots of malnourished children. But now with the rise of culture, specifically Afrobeats music, Mollywood, art, food and more, African culture has positioned itself at the forefront of Western influence. Black Panther was the culmination of the African Renaissance. Africa was always the blueprint family, from religion to hip-hop, even goths. They copied us. First they steal, then copy, destroy the evidence, and pass it off as their own. Then you come along with your naive, uneducated mind, thinking what they have is so cool because of your lack of understanding and research. Christianity is nothing more than a whitewashed account of our ancient Egyptian and Sumerian history. The Holy Tablets, beloved. I've spoken about this on my videos many times. Did you know that the first civilization who introduced taxes was ancient Egypt? Did you know that fishnet stockings were a fashion from ancient Egypt after fishermen used it on their women after a fishing trip who were naked? I've done my research, family. This is Black Egyptians. That's why cultural appropriation is such a thing now. The Rachel Dolezal scandal sums it up. I can't think of a better example. If you know any, let me know. I'll be waiting. Egyptian and Roman priests would travel thousands of miles to sit with our Egyptian priests and learn the secrets of the universe. Then why can't we sit down with our own African village elders like Kodro Mutwa and learn the secrets of our past and how to do things? See, many of us claim to be African, but the sad thing is, there's nothing African about you. You don't wear any African clothes, you can't speak the language, you don't follow any traditional African religions, you're married to Oyibos or Wazungus, haven't touched Africa in 20 years. If at all you've been there, remind me, which part of you is African? Again. Which part? Apart from the colour of your skin and your DNA, there's nothing more. There's nothing there. Every other race loves themselves, apart from us. Let's not talk about the skin bleaching creams and weaves. Let's not go into the family, let's not. Like Umar Johnson said, there's grassroots consciousness and there's Hollywood consciousness. Grassroots consciousness, Hollywood consciousness. Let's just be honest, most of you are fake. I'm not trying to force polygyny on anyone. That's not my job. It's your life, you're entitled to your own happiness. I'm just saying, let's have an honest and open conversation about it, because monogamy clearly is not working for us. You're still in a polygynous relationship when your mind is messing around with someone else, messing around with another woman. You're still in a polygynous relationship. It's just a closed polygynous relationship. You don't know about it until maybe you find out. Most of us have turned our backs on our ancestors, and we couldn't care less. We veered off the path of our original ways, and we've entered the darkness. Until we get our GPS, which is really our African ways, we'll continue to be lost in the wilderness. We don't follow our traditional African religions, we've shunned them. Though in low comparison compared to Christianity and Islam, that's evident because your mind has been unable to escape the programming of it being voodoo, witchcraft and blood sacrifices. There's more to it in that family. If you're in it at the time and had an open mind, go watch Ancestral Voices by Darlene Adofo if you want to know more about traditional African religion. Now there's a video of Umar Johnson breaking down how the Marvel characters are taken from their vision, but you still don't take it seriously. But yet you're a huge Marvel fan. We think everything we did back then was old and backward. We think we're modern, we think we're smart and evolved, but we're really westernized, confused and lost. And this monogamy thing that we follow, there's nothing but pain and anguish. Fam, polygyny is who we are, whether we like it or not. So we can either accept it and create a system with boundaries designed to work for everyone, or continue to play dumb and suffer the consequences. The choice is ours to make. Most of our grandparents were in polygamous relationships, and they made it work. Now it's common for people to say they have half brothers and sisters, but no mention of a religious union between them. Monogamy is a Eurocentric practice that has nothing to do with Africans. Absolutely nothing. Monogamy is a Eurocentric practice that has nothing to do with Africans. Absolutely nothing. Most ancient cultures throughout the world practiced some form of polygamy, and it was common in Africa where our ancestors practiced it freely, with respect and with love. Polygamy is the natural order of the African family structure. Polygamy can benefit everyone. Men feel happier, more fulfilled with more than one woman, and their love sexuality isn't limited. Women have the lifelong bond of a sister wife who can help with the duties of being a homemaker and the important task of raising children. And children will benefit from being able to learn new skills from many adults to grow up and have bonds from their siblings. Polygamy is illegal in most Western countries, and Europeans are suffering the consequences of that with their low birth rate. So because polygamy is illegal in the West, the flip side is you're going to have a low birth rate. How is that going to help your civilization or your race? It's not. We're better off, fam. So why would you want to live? If a polygamous marriage is performed, the already married person may be guilty of the crime of bigamy. That's a huge difference to what the Bible says. Exodus 21:10, for example. It's clear to me that most of you women and some of you men follow the laws of man, you don't follow the laws of God. If you know full well that you are polygynous and you are actively seeking a polygynous relationship, then why would you want to live in a country which has criminalized it? I want you to really think about that. How big of a deal is polygyny to you? They've criminalized your sexual nature, put regulations on the framework of formalizing your relationships, your innate desire to raise a family. You can go around sleeping with as many women as you want, as long as you're not building anything with them. A family, a legacy, an empire, that's all right. But if you want to do so righteously, under God, the Creator, according to your African traditional and cultural values and your genetic disposition, it's criminal. This only breeds sexual immorality and no one benefits from this. What a sad state of affairs we live in. That's the end of the video, fam. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to buy a copy of my book, Black Egyptians, the African Origins of Ancient Egypt, and this time Black History Month in the UK. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Segun Starchild, Black Egyptians. You cannot stop.